I think if you have an interest in running for political office, I think starting at the local level is a good place. And so you can do that by a variety of ways. You can serve on a board or commission. So there can be a natural succession to then, running for political office.
Yeah.
I also think going to town meetings or city council meetings, town council meetings, can be helpful.
Hey Wildcats, welcome back to the UAZ Podcast. My name is Rebecca, and today I have my colleagues here with me.
Nicole Camacho.
Celia Jalabi.
And this afternoon, we are really excited to be sitting down with the Mayor of Oro Valley. This is exciting because we've reached out to a few number of mayors here in Tucson, but I think a few of them were really busy and they couldn't make it to our podcast. And the Mayor of Oro Valley said a yes, which is really great. So we are going to learn so much from him because he has so much experiences. He has worked for, I think he's in his second term now as the Mayor of Oro Valley, and he started off at the University of Arizona as a student here. So he's a proud Wildcat. We're excited. And he's known for his integrity and fairness, engaging citizens and stakeholders to ensure that the town aligns with the future needs of the people who are in that community. And I have to say from my experiences that Oro Valley is one of the best places that I would love to live in. I remember a few months ago we were looking for a house and my mom loved the Oro Valley area.
Did
and
she?
She really loved it. She was like, that's where I want to be in some few years down the line. So I was like, okay, Mom, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to work hard and sometime we'll be in Oro Valley.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of your leadership, part of the community as well. That makes it like a very great place to live. And though it may not be like so much affordable, but I feel like it's one of the places that when you live in that area, you feel secured because the community is organized, the community is very clean. So it just brings that joy, and it's really a good place to be with a family. And one thing that we also learned is that you have 17 grandchildren.
I do. Actually, we just added a grandchild.
Oh my God.
We have 18. Little boy was born January 9th.
Yeah.
So we have 8 grandsons and 10 granddaughters.
Wow, that's great. They must be proud because I'm this person who never lived near my grandparents. So I always talk to them on the phone and I'm like, I wish I was near them. So I think they're proud to have you. So this afternoon we're going to be talking about leadership and advocacy, mostly learning from your experience as a leader in several industries, because you didn't only work in politics, you also worked in the architectural landscape business as well. So we really want to learn from you and ensuring that students can learn the advocacy skills and the leadership skills it takes to make one a great leader. So our first question for today is, you began your journey at the University of Arizona and went on severe in both federal agency and local government. How did your University of Arizona education shape the leader you are today?
Well, keep in mind that I graduated from the University of Arizona in 1985, and so I actually just had my 40th anniversary from graduating. Wow. But I've certainly been reflecting on that, and I think that some of the early experiences that I had while I was a student is, for example, I had a plant science class, and one of the first things after one of the first exams in that class, I realized, wow, my professor really expects me to know this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I learned real early, and I think that has helped to shape me from that time, is that connection between effort and results. And I realized that I would get the results from these courses and classes and experience to the degree of the effort that I put into it. And so that's certainly something that has something that I learned is the importance of effort, and that has a direct correlation to results, but not always. So I'll give another example. That was a plant science class, so things were pretty specific. I mean, in terms of learning about plants and the components of a plant and so on and so forth. But I also had an entry design class, and we had a particular project that I spent an incredible amount of time. So I put significant effort into it, pulled some all-nighters, and my two professors, who I think were grad students, they were fairly critical of my project, and I didn't do as well as I had hoped. And I had said, I put in all this effort, but I think what it came down to is that I still had a lot to learn, right? And so I think that's also part of the experience, is that sometimes we can put a lot of effort into something, and what it may mean is that there's even more effort that's required. So we have to be, patient with ourselves and so on and so forth. But of course, my experience at the university helped me to think critically, helped me to seek information, whether that was through books, or through professors, through other students, through other professionals. And so the other thing that I don't know that I fully appreciated is that it also provided me with some basic skills and abilities that opened doors for me that wouldn't have been opened otherwise. And some of that was through some internships with the National Forest Service and with the National Park Service that really dramatically kind of changed the trajectory of my thinking and career.
Well, congratulations for your 40th anniversary as a student here at the UVA. So,
time goes by fast.
Yeah, so fast for sure. So, the skills that you learned and that helped you, in your career today, how do you see those ones, changing at the moment, in the modern society? Because most people currently are don't waste your time going through the route of a 4-year degree, or just maybe go get the skills and continue in that route. So, do you see kind of many changes, or do you think it's still worth it to still go through that down the line with that degree?
I think it really depends.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what your goals are, aspirations. We have 7 children, and 6 of our 7 have degrees from higher education. Our youngest child doesn't. He has his own business.
Yeah.
I think he's going to do very well. I have to admit, it was concerning to my wife and I that he didn't seem to have an interest in going to college and getting a degree. In fact, we paid for his first semester. I think it was a waste of his time and a waste of our money because he didn't really have a desire or passion to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to have a real, as clear as you can when you're a young person, is to kind of have a vision as to where you're going. So for me, as I mentioned, if I had not gone to college, if I had not obtained a degree in landscape architecture, I wouldn't have been eligible for the jobs that I was hired to do. So for me, it opened doors. But I think it depends. I don't think it's an absolute. I think it just depends on what your aspirations, what your goals are. But there's a lot of studies and research that show that individuals generally that go to college are going to have a higher income and maybe a more stable life and so on and so forth. So it's hard to argue against higher education. So.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot. I think you're right, because it really depends with the person and what you want to study, because there are people who are really successful when they didn't go through the traditional college experience, and there are others who are successful because they went through that. So I think it really depends. When it comes to business, it's more of like a personality type, it's more of engaging with people, it's more of the community aspect of things, and then the connections that you have as well, and then the capital that you have to to start a business, all that comes in place. And when it comes to being a doctor or a landscape architect, you need the skills. You kind of have to be in the classroom. So it really depends.
Yeah, you need at least the basic skills that will get you into the door.
Yes.
I mean, you realize probably in any profession, I would think, when you graduate from school, is that you have, you still have a lot to learn, right? And I'm still learning. It never ends.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you built a career grounded in integrity and fairness in a time when leadership is often challenged. How can students learn to lead with their values while still creating real impact?
I think it's important to, first of all, know what your values are. So I think you really have to know yourself, know what's important to you, and so with that awareness, then to be authentic. Be true to yourself, be consistent, and applying those values. And it's not always easy. Sometimes you'll be put in a position where you have to stand your ground in terms of holding on to those values that are important to you. I think I think also you have to be to agree, and so this may it's adaptable, open-minded, learn from others. Value, maybe not core values, but your values can change over time as you, again, become more aware, have more relationships with others, and so I think you do have to be, be adaptable, be flexible. But I'm not suggesting that, there are core values of just being respectful, being honest, that I think those are values that you need to hold on to and to be consistent, because that helps to build trust. It helps people to have respect for you, even though they may not agree with you.
Yeah.
And I find that, serving as mayor, is that I may have disagreements, or there may be a percentage of my constituency that doesn't agree with a particular position I have, but I can respect their position, they can respect my position, and we can agree not to agree, but we don't have to be enemies, unkind. We can, just to move on. But I think when you know what your values are, when you hold on to those values and you're consistent, then people will naturally respect you, and I think it's helpful.
I think that's great advice for students here at the U of A. Now that you have wisdom and experience, what advice would you give yourself as a college student if you were able to speak to that version of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that, of course, every student has a different experience. So for me, I was married. I had a couple children, so I was a little bit of a late bloomer coming into college. And so I think probably if I were to have done anything differently, is I probably would have sought out opportunities with people in the profession. So for me, that was landscape architecture. To have sought out people in that profession and to have talked with them, to have looked for opportunities, if not to have worked for them, then to possibly have volunteered, preferably to have worked. And I say that because I came into school thinking that I would get my degree and then I would just go back out and open my own office because I had been self-employed. But when I I had the opportunity to do an internship with the Forest Service and with the National Park Service. And so that really broadened my vision for the profession of landscape architecture. And that came really so I was in a 5-year program.
Yeah.
Those experiences came towards the end of my college experience. If there was some way that I could have had those earlier, I think it would have helped help me to maybe better understand the value of some of the classes that I was taking, because I couldn't always make the connection. Why am I taking this class? What's the purpose or benefit of this class? So I guess that would be is to try to whatever profession you're seeking to try to have find experiences in that. And then also that might guide you to say, well, maybe that's not really what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I know you've lived in Oro Valley since 1996. So why Oro Valley specifically, not somewhere else in Tucson?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we, so my wife and I, we lived in Gilbert, Arizona.
Yes.
And I had my own business. I was actually going to ASU. And I was in their landscape architecture program, and I learned that it wasn't accredited. And so I learned that U of A's was accredited. So we moved to Tucson.
Yeah.
At that time, we were students. We didn't have a lot of income. And so we lived in Tucson. We lived near Ajo and Mission, and then later we lived off of Speedway in Queens, so not very far from here. Then when I graduated and went to work for the National Park Service, then we worked at various places around the country. When I had an opportunity to come back to Tucson, because we love this area, even though my wife grew up in Mesa and I grew up in Tempe, I came in advance of my family because some of our kids were in school. And really what was important to us was schools. So I looked at the different public school systems. And at that time, the Foothill School System and Amphitheater were the top school districts. Other things that were important to us was having access to the outdoors. So outdoor recreation is really important to our family. And close to home recreation was important. And so Oro Valley had good schools, had beautiful views of the Catalina Mountains, had access to trails and to washes, and that's what led me to kind of focus in that particular area. And my wife was very trusting in my judgment as far as,
That's great. And so is that what led you to serve as a mayor of that area, because you had lived there for many years and now I think you know all the corners. And if they could tell you to draw them up, even in your dream, you could be able to do it because you've been there for quite a while. So was that what led you to serve as a mayor?
Yes. There were, because of my work in the National Park Service, I was involved in various communities. I'm a community-oriented person.
Yes.
And so I was involved with the town. I served on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, for example, and served in our steering committees for our general plans and those kinds of things. But I also did a lot of traveling in Arizona with my work. Working for various communities, and I would see things in those communities that I would ask myself, well, why aren't we doing that in Oro Valley? Or it also seemed like we were, to some degree, that the parks were being neglected. And just given my background, parks were very important to me, the outdoors, and so there were some decisions that were being made that I didn't necessarily agree with. And again, because of my experience working with elected officials, I thought that I should run, and that's what I did.
That's great. That's good for families.
It is.
It's kind of a family, community oriented.
It's good for everybody.
Even people outside Oro Valley can like come and visit?
A lot do. Yeah, I often, when I'm at the park and talking with people at our parks and talking with people at various events, I mean, I would say, I don't know that it's the majority, but there's a large percentage of people that come to these events that aren't from Oro Valley. Yeah.
Okay, our next question is going to be on leadership and advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
So what does advocacy mean to you, and how do you get people to believe in the message of change? Because I know advocacy has to do with like making a change or making an impact. So how do you get people to believe in that message of change, and how can students learn from that to make their voice being heard?
Well, I think, advocacy is, I don't know that I have a dictionary definition of advocacy. But for me, advocacy is, you can be advocating for a particular individual. You can be advocating for a particular cause.
Yep.
You can be advocating for, a particular principle or whatever. So I think advocacy, at least at the town level, is, so I would say I see myself as an advocacy for parks and recreation, or an advocate for parks and recreation. And so I think that to be an advocate, it begins with, listening to in my case, my constituency, learning what is important to them. And so one of the things that we commissioned was a parks master plan. And we did a lot of community outreach. So I think first it's listening, it's learning, it's understanding, what the issue is. It's then being able to articulate, to be able to help other people to understand, the importance of whatever it is that you are trying to create or to implement. It also means, showing up and being at meetings and or whatever, classrooms, community spaces, and letting, speaking to those who are in authority. And working to persuade them or to increase, their understanding. I mean, you saw that recently here in the city of Tucson, where the council was proposing to increase, I think, parking rates.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you followed that or not. I just heard a little bit on NPR. And the decision by the council was to put it on pause because what they learned as they had a public hearing is that there were a lot of people in the community that didn't agree with it. And so they realized that they had more to learn about the impact that was going to have. So in many ways, the folks that had come to that meeting were, advocating for the council to think differently about a policy that they were going to be putting in place. And in this particular instance, they were successful, and the council put a pause on that, and they're going to be, discussing that more. So I think that, I wasn't at the meeting, and sometimes a topic can be controversial, and so people can be passionate, and we seem to live at a time when people seem less restrained in terms of, not being respectful or whatever. I don't think that's particularly helpful. I mean, I try to, even though could be being directed to me, I try to not take it personally, and I try again to listen. What is it that they're saying? So so that I can, make the best decision possible. But I think real advocacy begins with listening and learning.
I love how you talked about the importance of the importance of sharing. Like, for example, if you're advocating for something and then you share it to the opponent, I'm like, this is the importance. This is why I'm thinking this idea will work. It helps a lot and saves a lot of time, because most of the time, like, you may be advocating for something, but none of the person in the room understand what you're trying to talk about. And so it really creates a lot of chaos. But if people can understand, for example, you talked about the parking. If the community is trying to say, no, we really don't require that at the moment, I think the officials should kind of like explain to the citizens and be like, this is why we want to raise the parking. Maybe we want to use this money somewhere. And at the end of the day, they'll all come up with a conclusion that will help both parties. So that importance is very important. So like, how do you deal with when it comes to controversial topics, whereby like you come up with something, you ask the mayor, this is what you're going to work on, and the community is like, no, you're not going to work on that. So how do you deal with those issues?
Well, again, you know, in some ways this goes back to the question about values.
Yeah.
And so as much as possible, I try to listen. I try to learn where people are coming from. But I also, you know, look at the the issue. And so, for example, in my community, we have an area that's called the Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve.
Yeah.
And it's about a 200-acre site that was a former golf course. And the golf course went bankrupt. The property was purchased by a developer and was going to develop about half of the property into homes. Well, the people that had lived around this golf course, of course, they bought their homes thinking that it was always going to be open space.
Yeah.
So they opposed it being developed into homes. So in that particular case, I would just say, you know, listened, and then began to explore, okay, so what are our options here? Because the property has been purchased.
Yeah.
And, you know, long story short, the community donated almost $2 million towards the purchase of the property. And there were some other things that helped to make it happen, because the full price was $4.5 million. So the property was purchased. So now the property is going to be managed as open space. It had included a pond that was part of the golf course that was no longer a pond because it was an artificial feature.
Yeah.
But a lot of the folks in the community wanted to have the pond. And I wasn't in agreement with that, partly because of my values of being a landscape architect, living in the Sonoran Desert, and so on and so forth. So in this particular case, I mean, I advocated for not having a pond and restoring that. And but I was in the minority, and the majority of council made the decision to have the pond. So I think in that particular instance, you know, I did my best to try to persuade and explain what my position was, and but I wasn't going to change my position because I didn't think it was the right decision. So
kind of like being grounded and standing to your true values. Like you said, you're not supposed to change, kind of like a chameleon. So you're supposed to be strong on your values.
Yeah.
So how was your experience with the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service?
You know, it was a wonderful experience. So I did those 2 internships. I worked for the National Park Service for most of my career. And that provided me with a range of experiences, some of that more traditional landscape architecture where you're doing design work. Yeah. I also had some experience in construction supervision. But the majority of my experience was actually working with communities. And so I had some unique positions in the Park Service where a lot of my work wasn't actually working in the parks, but it was taking the mission of the National Park Service and the values of the National Park Service and bringing those into a community and helping them if they were wanting to preserve open space or they wanted to create a trail or a trail system, then I would help them with that. But I think some of the things that I learned from working in the National Park Service and the Forest Service, because towards the end of my career I did do a short stint with the Forest Service, is that it taught me about stewardship. It taught me about the importance of, the decisions that we make today can have implications for, decades to come.
Yeah.
And it also helped me to maybe develop some patience that decisions that we were making today weren't necessarily going to be fully realized until years, decades, because of doing restoration work, for example, or and so that has had some. How that has influenced me is that, working for the National Park Service was working for something that was bigger than myself, certainly, that had this wonderful mission, but also just that idea of thinking in the long term and not the short term.
I love when you talked about the decision making, because as the mayor, when you're making decisions, because of course each decision that you make as a mayor affects that community.
It does.
You said in decades. So when you're making decisions, how long does it take you to make those decisions? Mostly when it comes to the policy, does it take you weeks? Is it instantly? How do you make the decisions?
Yeah, well, it really depends. So. Yeah, it depends on the nature of the project. Maybe it depends a little bit on the complexity of the project. It depends on the degree of community involvement. So just like in anything, there's a range, right? There's some decisions that are made fairly quickly. And then there are other decisions that require a significant amount of time. And that's driven because, again, it could be because of the complexity of the decision that's being made. It could be dependent upon it could be consequential because of the decision that's being made. So requires a little bit more time and thinking, maybe analysis. And then, of course, there's other decisions that, are more easily, more short term. So through the day, it can be any number of decisions.
Thinking about that always makes me scared, because when I look at leadership, I know it's a journey of impact, and it's going to be either negative or positive way, but it does impact people. So every decision you make as a leader impacts people in so many ways. And so I'm like, how am I going to be making decisions maybe when I become a leader somewhere? So that always makes me think and learn more about that. So I really love also the journey that you had from your national service experience to the local government, which is really unique. So what leadership lessons did you carry from those experiences, and how can students apply them regardless of their career path? I know you've talked about some of those, like this being stewardship, in that sense, decision making, and so many other advice that you've given us, but maybe if you can maybe give us one or more too, tailoring to their career path specifically.
Sure. Well, I think it's respecting, the mission of of whatever organization or entity that you're working for. So I think that's important. I think it's also important to leave things better than you've found them, ideally, and that can be measured in different ways.
That's really great, because I also interviewed one of the students, and when we interviewed him, so he's a first generational student, and he was like, it's really very important to leave a good trail behind you, because as first gens, we come in, we don't know anything, but what he's striving to do is that he wants to to ensure that he works hard as he leaves the University of Arizona. At least other students can look up to him and be like, I saw the students work in this and this, and the student government and all these experiences. I think me too, I'm empowered to do this something because somebody else did that. So he was also like talking about that. So I feel like it's also really great.
Just so I don't forget a question regarding decision making you mentioned. So what do you do sometimes when you're at a crossroad? Maybe there's an ethical dilemma that you need to make a decision about something, but it's kind of conflict with your own personal values or kind of conflict with your own professional values. So how do you navigate that?
It's not easy. And I think that as much as possible, there is a principle in the Forest Service, Pinchot Gifford, I think it was, it's the idea of, the for the greater good. And so sometimes for the greater good may not necessarily align with my own personal value. So let me try to give an example of that. We had a project that involved annexing a particular area. So annexation is just a tool to grow the boundaries of a community. So we had an opportunity to annex an area that wanted to be annexed, but there were some individuals that surrounded that property that didn't want it to be annexed and didn't want the proposed development that was part of that annexation agreement. And I really understood where these people were coming from. And so I could sympathize. And quite honestly, it didn't really align with my values and with planning principles. But I knew and understood that annexing this particular property would be for the greater good of the town of Oro Valley and for the citizens of Oro Valley. And so the greater good that it was going to have for the town and for virtually everybody in my community outweighed the individuals that lived around that property that were outside of Oro Valley. I had to, I made a decision to approve the annexation, even though it was difficult.
So what I get from that is sometimes you have to weigh the cost and benefits of those decisions and go with the best one.
And that's not always easy. Right?
As a second-term mayor, you balance preserving Oro Valley's character while promoting progress. I had the opportunity last year to go to the Oro Valley State of Town.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I had so much fun, and I got to learn so much what Oro Valley has to offer. So how can young leaders learn to navigate change responsibly while honoring tradition?
Yeah. So I think that, again, speaking as a mayor, we've lived in Oro Valley for 30 years. We just celebrated Oro Valley's 50th anniversary.
Okay.
And, so for the folks that were part of creating Oro Valley in 1974, Oro Valley at that time was just a few square miles. Now it's almost 36 square miles, so it's grown significantly.
Yes.
It's grown significantly since my family moved there 30 years ago. So with that growth has come change. But there are some inherent values that are important to Oro Valley, and so you mentioned about safety. So safety is something that is important to Oro Valley. Yeah. The views of the mountains is something that's important to Oro Valley. The open space is something that's important. Good design cleanliness.
Yeah.
All of those things are important. And so as the community has grown, we have, during my tenure and councils before me that I think have really been guided by the town's general plan, I think have recognized those values. And even though there has been change, what that has meant is that instead of having one police officer, we have now 107 or 8 commissioned police officers to help, maintain that safety that's important to our community. We take into consideration, for example, preserving views, and so how that's accomplished is, limiting the height of buildings in particular areas. Open space is something that's important. So the way that is accomplished is, I mentioned the Vistoso Trails Nature Preserve, but also just as part of our development, there's different planning principles that you can get the same amount of density, but you can carve out an area and retain that as open space into perpetuity. So, Oro Valley has grown, but even with that growth and change, we've still honored, the high regard that our community has for public safety. We've still honored the protection of views. We've still honored the protection of open space. And so it's important that in terms of, navigating change or is to understand, again, coming back to values, what is important to you, and ensuring that decisions that you make don't erase what's important to you, what's important to your community, or whatever other context you're working under. So, what's worth preserving, what needs improving, who might be affected. And I think responsible leadership, balances, I think is what I'm trying to communicate, balances both of those, right? So it's,
So what we understand is changes here and there are good, but as so long you don't forget your roots, your background, what you owe and what you want to preserve. That's good. Okay.
I would say, and I'll just add, and again, coming from a mayor's viewpoint, is that, as communities change, this is why we go through a general plan process every 10 years, is that we have new people, we have new perspectives, new insights. And so as a result of that, things also shift and change, right? But what we've found is that, at least in our community, some of those core values of safety, views have remained, a high priority to people.
So your lifelong commitment to service, from being an Eagle Scout to raising family to your experience in the professional world and in the political world, how has this service and experience shaped your approach to leadership, and how can students learn from that to become advocates in their own small communities?
Well, service is something that has really, from the time that I was a young person, so really through scouting, through my church affiliation, through schools help young people to have opportunities for service. So for me, service, I think teaches humility. It teaches gratitude. To a degree, it teaches accountability, and so I think for students, students are busy. You have a limited amount of time. So I think it's really looking for, small, start small, and volunteer, where you can, whether that's on campus. And so also it may mean, or it could mean, that you're mentoring a fellow student, or, you have responsibility for a group project or something like that. So I think it's a matter of, especially when you're a student, is starting small. When I was going to school here, there was the student government.
Yes.
And so we had the American Society of Landscape Architects. It was a student chapter, and I served as the president of that. And so we, as a chapter, did some small things to try to give back to the school and to the campus, and so I think I think service is really core to a core value that we should all try to incorporate, but also acknowledge, that at any particular time in our lives, we may have a limited amount of time that we can give. So don't spread yourselves too thin.
I was going to ask you about the service stuff, like if you were part of any clubs that you've already mentioned that, which is great. Because I've also heard from so many people who says they regretted not being involved in college earlier. And so if students can get involved earlier, they get to know what they want to do in life, because you experience what you think you're passionate about. And sometimes those passions are lying here until you do the work. You realize how hard it is, so how great the job will be in the future. Now that you have served in office for quite a number of years, and looking at the political climate at the moment, the challenges that people are facing when it comes to politics, what positions do you think students can aspire to work for in the political world?
The two of you have degrees in political science.
I'm working towards getting my
Working
degree, so
So what that says to me is that you have an interest
Yes.
in journalism law.
Yes.
So journalism is very community-oriented, and I work with a number of attorneys. But I think that, so kind of along those lines of service, to start small, in the sense of what I mean by that is that there are many opportunities to volunteer in communities.
Yes.
And so I think if you have an interest in running for political office, I think starting at the local level is a good place, and so you can do that by a variety of ways. You can serve on a board or commission. So we have a number of boards and commissions in Oro Valley.
Yeah.
They're not quite as time-consuming or demanding, but it gives you a little bit of a taste and experience of what it's like to work with others. You become more acquainted and familiar with some of the issues in your community. There's probably other opportunities. I think with that, then there can be a natural succession to then, running for political office.
Yeah.
I also think going to town meetings or city council meetings, town council meetings, can be helpful. And they're so much more accessible because you can attend it virtually, right? You can listen. I'm always surprised when people tell me, I saw you. So I think those are some ways. I think it's helpful to serve or to volunteer on a campaign. And to see what that experience is like. I mentioned about attending council meetings, serving on a board or commission. I think somebody said they worked, or you had an interest in working for somebody who was in elected office, not necessarily running. So I think that's another great way, is to work, especially at the state and federal level, maybe even at the county level. I think that provides some great insights. Congressman Juan Ciscomani, he worked for Governor Ducey in some capacity. I don't remember what, but that really served as a springboard for him to run for Congress. I don't think he'd run for any other political office before that. So, does that answer that
Yes,
question?
it does answer my question. And I love when you talked about the virtual aspect of it, because wherever you are, you can still listen to the city council meetings.
You can.
Yeah.
Has there been any time where you organized a public meeting and then no one showed up, or the quota you want is not enough to start a meeting? Or
I haven't had, I mean, certainly in my professional life, yes. In my public life, as the mayor, I think Oro Valley in some ways is unique. It's a fairly engaged community. And one of the positive things that came out of COVID is that, it was Zoom meetings and virtual meetings. And so now we have both in-person and virtual combined. And we even have, a way for people to participate in the meeting if they want to speak. They can do that. Yes, we've had meetings where there wasn't a lot of folks, and to some degree what that may tell you is that it doesn't rise to a level of controversy or whatever, or people are happy with it. That may not always be true. I mean, it's possible that people just didn't know about it as much as we try to communicate. But usually it's an indication that the topic just doesn't, it's not. I wouldn't say that it's not important, but just that it, whatever is being proposed, there's general agreement that it's a good thing.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. I know you're coming from Oro Valley, so it's quite far away from the University of Arizona.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, we really appreciate talking to you, having this conversation with you. Really, it's teaching us a lot because, like we said, some of us aspire to go into the political world, and we appreciate your time. And so, I really love the aspects of decision making that you talked about, the impact of advocacy and the effects of decision making is really important when it comes to leadership. And so really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today.